Alright, I'm going to come here and do building shadows. In the previous video, I talked about shadow basics. I talked about color, transparencies, and how to subset layers to get the shadows to look the way you want. Those are all very important steps. If you haven't done that, this should be part of a channel, and you can just go up and see the video before this on how to set this up. So once you have these layers set up, here, as I have done here, I've got shadows, trees, and buildings. What I'm going to do is construct the building shadows for this video. And I'm going to start because I already have the building shapes done. I called it roof in this case. So I'm going to go to this roof layer, which is all these buildings. I put previously some parapets, green roofs, and done all of these things. I have some building elements out here as well. So I'm just going to do select all to select everything on that layer. And I'm just going to go to edit copy because I'm going to want the exact same objects. And I'm going to lock that. And I'm going to come down to this layer I made in the previous video that says buildings. And I'm going to go object paste in front, or sorry, edit paste in front, control F, or usually the easiest way I do it. And so there we go. We don't see anything because A, I've duplicated the objects, and B, I've put them right underneath themselves. But what I want to do is I'm going to come here, and I'm just going to use my graphic style to set it to a basic graphic style, which made it white with black. I'm going to turn off the black lines. I don't need that. And I'm going to change the color to a color I like to use, which is usually like a deep purple or something of that effect. I talked about that in the last video. It just sort of adds interest. Now again, we don't see anything because all that work is directly underneath the roof plans. But if I were to just hide this really quick, we can see I've got this purple color. In the last video, I set the layer with the transparencies, so that's why it looks lighter than it does. Alright, and so the great thing about this trick is you don't have to draw the shadows out, because shadows can get pretty complicated. But what I'm going to do is, this is a let me turn that layer back on. What I'm going to do is it's a little trick to really make shadows that look approximately right for site plans, because we don't need to make them perfect. It's a rendering. So I'll go ahead and I'll just select one of these building elements, and I'm just selecting this one. You can start with it, whichever one you want. And I'm going to go to Effects. I'm going to go to Distort, Transform. I'm going to go to Transform. And the tool here that you can use is you can use Make Copies. And so what I'm really going to do is I'm going to make a bunch of copies of this object moving at about 45-degree angles over. So I don't need to change the scale of the object. In any case, it's going to stay the same. But what I do need to do is do Move. So I'm going to do something small and negative because I want it to go to the left. And vertical is always going to be negative. Sometimes you might go with a positive number in this case with the horizontal, but vertical, because usually south is always down, you want the shadows to go towards north, you're going to use a negative here. So negative 0.01. Something very small. If I did a preview on this, we're probably not really going to see anything happen there, though there would be a subtle change there. Because the key to this is to do the number of copies, is to go 13, for example, and I can say OK, or before I hit OK, we can see the preview right there. I just added a little shadow, and it looks like what it's doing. It's coming out at 45-degree angles. It has all the transparencies, all the colors already made, and that was really simple to do. I didn't have to construct anything. In this case, this building element is at 45 degrees. So it sort of is in line. It might have been a little easier to draw. But something like this, or this, which is off-angled, or this shape, which is at a complicated shape, it could be difficult to draw this perfectly. But now that I have it once, what I'll do is I'll just drop this object into my graphic style, and I can select all of these elements. I could do them all at the same time, but if I just selected one, I can hit the graphic style, and we can see it's coming right off the shadow just like it should. Okay, so if I zoomed in, it looks perfect for the drawing, but I'm going to show you the trick that makes it work. And this is okay, because when you zoom in, you're going to actually see it's pixelated, or at least it looks pixels. It looks pixelated. It's not actually pixels, is because what I've done is I've just taken this square shape right from the transform, and I've copied it just a little bit over. And so this little corner here is because I just made a copy of the shape. And then this corner is just a copy of the shape, and this corner is a copy of the shape, and so on and so forth. And because the way I did my transparencies, it all blends together as one object. So up close it looks a little pixelated. Doesn't matter. It'll look fine when you print it out. We did it so small that looks good. If you have to blow it up, you can change the number to be smaller if you need more accuracy, but really I've never had to do that. So I can go ahead and apply this to all my objects. If I were to just select everything here like this, I'm just going to be selecting all the buildings, and I can do there quickly. Boom, all of the objects have shadows. They have all the detail that they need for the little push-ins and push-outs. They are really accurately drawn based on the 45-degree angle that I've set to it. Now the one thing that you might see is some of these shadows look quite big. So for example, this little thing here, which is this little maybe convenience stand or something at these ball fields, is very long, implying it's a tall building, right? So I can change that really easily just by selecting that shadow and coming over to my appearances and going to the transform tool, because the way I just make it shorter then is just to make fewer copies. So maybe this only needs to be 5 copies long. I'll say OK, and now we can see that shadow has become much shorter. And the same thing over, here maybe these bleachers are just way too big, so I can come here and maybe these should only be 10 pixels long. Maybe a little bit even shorter than that. I'll go 8. Say OK, and see we can see the shadow just jumps down in, and I can change this one also to 8. I find that you only need a couple shadows. Like, hey, is this building slightly different than that, and different than that, and different than that? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. Having all about the same size shadows is important. But you might have a small course, a medium, and a tall size shadow. Just a few changes like that really sets it well. Now what you might have to do is do roof shadows, because for example, this is implying that it's casting a shadow on this roof because it's taller. Well, this method's not going to work, because where the shadows are, it is casting it onto the ground, not onto rooftop. So remember, a couple videos ago, I had to add shadows to make this gable look right. So I added shadows there. So if I have a shadow that I see needs to maybe fall in here, or a shadow that maybe needs to fall in there, what I really need to do is add it on that layer and probably just draw it out. Usually it's just 1 or 2, if at all. Most of the time I don't have situations like that above what I've already shown. But you can go here, and I did that with the roof shade from a previous video, and I can go and unlock that layer. And you know what, if there's technically I need a shadow in here, I would just come in and draw that shadow just to the shape that I needed, and set the transparency to 50, because in this layer I've set the transparency at the object layer. Sorry if that's getting a little confusing, but I just added in there, and I can do the same thing to that if this indeed was taller than that surface. So I might come through and go to my ellipse tool. I'm going to offset the center, hold Alt to get it in the center. I'm going to actually have to cut this apart, so just add a little shadow in that area, and then I'm going to add a shadow from the center of my roof. I'm going to make clipping mask. Oops, I clipped the wrong way. Actually, I guess I'll make compound path. That's what I wanted to do. Oh, I got to cut that out. This could take a few steps here. Circles are always a pain. Actually, I want to do this side. I'll now make this a clipping mask. Oops, I guess I did have it on the right side. Always forget that. Cover up anywhere the area I want, make clipping mask, and then I just got the circle. So I should have probably made that its own video, how to deal with circles, but you could draw it out or do what I did, which is I did 2 circles, offset them, then clipped the areas that I didn't want and didn't need. But again, I had to do that on a different layer than my ground shadows. Anyway, there are some building shadows for you. I'll do tree shadows next.